The girls got into the car. Jane and her best friend Bridget got in the back seat. They sped off on their way home after spending a fun night at the nightclub. On the way home, the driver started to speed up the car for fun. However, the driver, somewhat intoxicated, swerved off the road, slammed into a lamppost, and everything went dark. Jane woke up at home. She got out of bed, walked over to her mother and father, and started to explain why she came home late that night. But they ignored her. She went over to her brothers and sisters and tried to talk to them. But nobody would face her and have a conversation with her. She was confused. She started to get scared. The next moment she walked into a room filled with people. Some she knew, some she didn't know. They were all sitting and talking, drinking and eating. She tried to talk to them, but nobody would answer. Nobody would face her. Nobody noticed that she was there. She panicked. She turned around, and the next moment they were all gone. The house was empty. Then once again, all went dark. Welcome to Natural Born Talents. Today's subject is about sexual development as done through the matrix versus how our ancestors teach and nurture sexuality. To best exemplify this, I'm going to give you a case that just finished concluding that my ancestors and these individuals' ancestors had been working on. Now, on the other side, subjects like this are not controversial. There's no issues. Nobody cares for what your sexuality is. But with the matrix the way it is now, and the abuse of notions like sexuality, or what race you are, or what faith you are, some people may find this subject a little bit difficult to get to the end to. But I suggest that you listen to this because this does deal with every single individual on this planet at this time, and what they're struggling with or what they have surrendered to. All of this information comes from the other side during my out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences, or what the ancestors relay to me through channeling. I am not trying to tell anyone to practice one thing or another. I am simply trying to point out what I see. Having said that, however, this video should encourage your confidence within your sexuality, your faith, and or the origins of your race. It is not intended to condemn anyone for what they believe or for what they want to practice. It is to point out that there truly is only one evil on this planet, and that is called ego. And of course, the people who have succumbed to ego or follow ego. Having said that, I'll give you an example of what the ancestors see happening in the matrix all the time. This scenario starts off with a young boy named John, obviously not his real name, and Jane, obviously not her real name. John and Jane grew up in a small town in the countryside of the United States. This town had some connections to the big city, but was more or less on the outskirts. Now, Jane just got her driver's license. John already had his. They're around 16 and 17 years old, respectively. Jane and John had been good friends for a long time. And for the first time, John and Jane started to think that their relationship might become something more than just friends. John had always been fond of Jane, and Jane had always been affectionate towards John. In fact, the first time they kissed, Jane was the one that initiated the contact because John was very patient and reluctant to push himself on anyone. Jane's aura was a yellow with a violet overlay, and this is very important for later in the story. So if you don't know those auras, look them up. John had the blue-tan combination with a crystal overlay. All of those auras, for the exception of the violet, are very passive auras, and they are very compatible auras. However, the first time they kissed, it didn't go so well. Nothing weird or unusual happened. It just didn't feel right. It was like kissing brother and sister. John felt that perhaps Jane wasn't a very good lover. Maybe she was just inexperienced or something. Jane, on the other hand, didn't realize that she wasn't very adept at making love. She thought what she had performed was quite normal. Both of them seemed to be quite naive about many things. But in any case, John felt that someday he could marry Jane. John wanted what is known as the Christ Angel family game, something akin to the Brady Bunch, but we'll get to that a little bit later in the video. Jane thought she wanted something like that. However, Jane and John lived in a somewhat conservative Christian community. So to have fun, Jane would often go off with her girlfriends to see movies and things, dance clubs, or whatever. However, Jane was the only one in the group that didn't have a steady boyfriend other than John. The other members of her group were much further along within their relationships with their boyfriends. It is likely that Jane made advances to John just to fit in with her group and say, "See, I have a boyfriend too." So when Jane came back to see John after one of these events with her friends, John started to get jealous and started asking Jane what she was doing with her friends all the time. And at the time, Jane's relationship with her female friends was just that, platonic friendship. However, John in a way kind of worshipped Jane. He thought much of her, and his male ego wanted to hold on to her. This made Jane feel that she wasn't free around John, and Jane was instinctively a free-spirited individual. She felt it was her right to explore anything she wanted and in any way she willed. Though she still liked John very much, she liked being out with her friends because it gave her a sense of freedom. Also one night, she noticed two girls who were very intimate, and for the first time she thought she might like to try something like that. She was kind of envious of the warmth and the freedom the couple seemed to be experiencing. Again, Jane was not very secure about her sexuality, but she felt freer with her friends than she did around John, and she felt the warmth of the female energy from her friends, which she liked very much. This doesn't mean John was the sole reason for influencing those feelings. John was a very passive person in the first place. It's just his male ego, which probably was influenced by his Christian upbringing, made Jane feel she was a little bit trapped by him. Now, this is very typical of yellow auras. Yellow auras loved to be adventurous and free. Later in life, they like to get down and get married. Yellows who do not have a lot of freedom in their early years of their life tend to have marriages that fall apart rather quickly. However, once they experience all that life has to offer at an early age, they tend to do very well in a married relationship and even are compatible with the blue-tan aura that John had. However, there was much, much more going on behind the lines within this story than just auras and John and Jane's feelings. In Part 2, more of the story and analysis. In Part 3, the final conclusions the angels, the ancestors, and the two individuals involved had decided upon. Part 4 will be about John and Jane's adventures outside of the Matrix, which is far more interesting. So stay tuned, and thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next video.